about the role of the church in mental health, or maybe the role of religious centers. So we're talking about everywhere there's a flavor of God that we all worship, and then this is very important because when people hear mental health, if you're not careful, they will spiritualize it.
Okay.
Instead of saying go see a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you would hear, I'll pray about it, Christ died on the cross for me. I don't know other flavors that people add to it, but if we're not careful, there's a spiritual element, that people always attach to mental health. They just hand it over to God, and one thing I like to say is, when you're hungry, you go to a restaurant or you cook. You don't pray about it. I mean, you don't put your pot on fire and begin to speak in tongues. If perchance you see anything there, would you consume it? Most of the time they say no. And then when you also wake up, I'm not sure you pray before you brush. I mean, dear Lord Jesus, should I brush my mouth today? I'm not sure. So when we're talking about mental health, how come or why does it look like there's a spiritual sentiment around it?
If we focus on just the church, we might lose some perspective because, according to a study in Hindawi, where they were talking about the role of religious centers in depression, it is noticed that some of those religious centers have a lot of high standards that a lot of people are supposed to aspire to. And when people don't aspire to these standards, there's guilt, there's depression, there's a feeling of worthlessness. These things can contribute to the beginning of depression, or contribute to depression itself. And another thing is, in the society we live in, there seems to be very little knowledge about mental health.
Yes.
There seems to be very little knowledge about recognizing when somebody is mentally ill, and not just depressed.
Overwhelmed by life and they need help.
I was in a discussion earlier, and they were talking about the differences between being overwhelmed, being sad, being disappointed, feeling guilty. But then again, let me give you a personal experience. I spent 8 years in school. I was supposed to spend 6, but I was ill, and so I had to repeat. And very close to my final year, my former classmates were in their final year.
That's tension.
So there was a lot of tension going on. They were preparing for exams, were snapping their photos for the final year book, and these were my classmates. And at some point, I was sad, and I spoke to someone about it, and she rebuked me. Said it's not my portion. I cannot be sad. Without addressing the issue.
It was spiritualized.
The issue was my response to that particular tension.
Yeah.
Because the tension, how should I deal with it?
In front of me.
And luckily, I was able to pull through. But there are people who are not so lucky. There are people who would not be able. We do not have the same strength. Another thing is people who are actually now depressed, who have filled all the criteria for depression, and are supposed to be seen by mental health specialists or psychiatrists, are being prayed for. Hands are being laid on them, and demons are being casted out of them. For some exorcism, it won't go on. And they are being told to pray and fast. And they do all these things, and it doesn't work. And they slip further into depression. And the same process repeats itself.
Like a ripple effect.
And then the person feels, oh, the only way out of this is
exit.
To take the easy way out. And then it happens, And then we don't blame ourselves because we do not know any better.
Yeah.
But ideally, anybody who is depressed should just like you said earlier, if you're hungry, you go to restaurants, you go to the kitchen and eat. When people are mentally ill, the only thing I think that religious centers can do for them is to offer companionship, offer that safe space, offer that community that can help them heal faster, and not to help heal them, and not to heal them, but to help them heal faster while they're being seen by mental health specialists.
Okay, I'm looking at something. I'm looking at it also from this point of view, just like you said, is the fact that anyone watching, we don't have a challenge with prayers. Prayer works, but prayer alone may not.
Yeah.
And then it is humility for us. We should be humble enough to accept that. One reason why I think, for example, God was so protective or so in love with David was the fact that he was shameless. The dude messed up almost a couple of times, but he did. At every point in time, there was no iota of ego in him. He would always go back to his source. So I've been a pastor for 15 years, both as an appointed, as an ordained pastor put together. And then I know the place of prayers. I know how effective prayer is. But just like you said, we need to be humble enough to say that my place here is a spiritual covering, not an emotional covering, not a mental covering. And the earlier the better we take responsibility for that truth, we accept that truth, and we can recommend. Because there are people anointed by God, even in our congregation. So why am I not sending them there? There are people at the mosque who are called, who are skillful, and who are graceful, no matter whatever you think about it. They have results, measurable results. They have moved people from a state of unhappiness to happiness. So why are we not recommending them? So I think, just like you said, we should take responsibility for the fact that people look up to us spiritually. Does not mean that they look up to us in every area of their life.
That's true.
We're not omitting anything.
That's
so
true.
I am a pastor, fantastic. It's a different ballgame from, do I have the required expertise in this field? If I do, that's fine, because I'm in the mental space. So yes, I can help mentally. But if you cannot, please refer. Then another thing, just like you said, which I can suggest, is that we can create therapy hubs. Just like groups have departments in churches, we have choir, we have dance, and all of those things. I think we can create therapy hubs where we do not just have counselors, but certified counselors, or certified coaches, or licensed therapists, where there's some level of professionalism brought into church. And the reason is because Nigeria is a religious space. Look at how many people go to 31st night. I had to tweet something that, you know what, any crossover without a mental crossover is a change of date. You just change it to the enter jack. And I think it's true, because 31st night, somebody can be in a hotel 11 p.m., 11:45 p.m. They have switched. They must shout Happy New Year with whatever by 12, and we can't judge them. So a lot of people go to churches. They go to all the worship centers, whether Christian, Muslim, anywhere, and they have a right to worship. So that means that to some extent, our spiritual leaders are being revered, and because of that reverence, I think that we can channel mental health into it also. We can take responsibility for the fact that we don't know all things, and secondly, we can create hubs. We can create hubs where we can have professionals be a part of the department so that they can offer help. Another passion that I have is about marriage. And I've seen counseling units at different churches. And honestly, I think they've all tried. I think we can, however, add a little more, involve professionals.
Yeah.
I see people counsel just from the Bible, which is awesome. I love it. I don't have any challenge about it. Can we get marriage and family therapists involved also? I mean, involve them. Because sometimes people come for coaching or therapy after, of course, they are married and going through issues, and then you ask them questions like how they dated, their courtship, blah, 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 and then you are shocked they weren't even asked when they were dating. I mean, I don't know, but APROKO, what do you think?
You actually said it all. The ability to know where
your expertise
ends
and submit.
I am
And submit to somebody else.
My skill set is here.
Umba.
Should be able to refer if I were to bring it from the medical point of view. If I were to be a neurosurgeon today and you bring someone who has appendicitis, as simple as it is, I should.
Is it even simple? Okay, simple to you. It's hard to me. It's hard to me.
As uncomplicated as it is in many cases, common sense says refer this particular person to someone who is specialized in that field to be able to treat. Part of the reason is ego. We want to be known as supermen. We want to be known as superhumans. We want to
Media has contributed to it. We just want to do all things.
We want to do it all.
God is the only one who can do all things. Human beings cannot. Can we leave God and let him focus on his job description when we deal with us?
There are lots of things that are wrong, and there are a lot of things that can be changed.
Maybe churches should actually also have maybe a mental health or awareness month, from children to teenagers church to adults. I think maybe once a month.
It's a stigma also. Because
what kind of stigma?
We all know that Nigeria is a religious nation.
But very powerful.
We love
prayers.
We are the only people that sing praise and worship in them when we watch football. So
that's serious.
No, it is. Nigeria is the only country who
our team like we worship God.
Sing praise and worship as the fans.
Wow.
The fans
okay. In asking God for intervention without practicing or training.
Exactly. So when that happens, there tends to be, if there is no sufficient knowledge about a particular thing, anybody who presents with such a condition is tend to be stigmatized. For example, at some point in Nigeria there wasn't enough knowledge about albinism.
Oh yeah.
And they were seen
we used to sing for them on the road. Yeah.
They were seen as
different flavor.
As a different. I once watched a video where a child was practically screaming in terror because an albino was coming close to her.
Wow.
But these are normal people.
I'm telling you.
So bringing it back to mental health, because there is no knowledge about mental health, there seems to be a lot of stigma. And so people are not able to own up to the fact that they may be mentally ill. And sometimes they just want to talk.
They won't even forgive you with this statement that they are mentally ill. Now, I think that we should maybe break it down. I think that people should know that mental health is not that you're running mad.
No.
Mental health is the fact that you can be overwhelmed by life. So we're talking about emotional instabilities, which almost all of us go through. We're talking about different flavors, maybe some flavor of trauma, abuse. I mean, anything that can disturb your easy flow and your capacity to enjoy your life.
Okay.
For me, it's an emotional instability. Anything that hinders your capacity to be happy. And then maybe the next one we'll talk about what happiness means, what unhappiness is, and how people can transit from a state of unhappiness back to happiness. So I think we should do that the next time.
Yeah, we should.